Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the BFG Podcast. Today, me and Jonathan are here with another Phoenix legend, Ben Sigmund, for our Legend of the Phoenix series. This is episode 2. Welcome, Ben. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you very much.
I will hand over to Jonathan this time for some opening questions.
Cool. So 181 games for the Phoenix, 7 goals. That and even before that, playing for the Football Kings. That's quite a career in professional football over a long time.
Yeah, it certainly was. I remember going to the Football Kings when I think I was about sort of 18, 19 and was trying to crack in as a professional. And I was there for a wee while, but never really kind of cracked it and didn't get a full-time contract. You know, I was working as well as trying to play, and so it was quite tough back then. So, you know, to get my opportunity when the Phoenix came and when it was turned professional in Wellington, you know, that was kind of my last opportunity, because when I actually signed professionally with the Phoenix, I was 26. So, you know, you're starting to get towards the end of your time a little bit to get as a professional contract. So, you know, when that came along and I got the opportunity, I was over the moon.
Yeah. Can you remember your first goal?
I do remember it. It was in Newcastle, I think it was. And the ball came over and pretty much just shut my eyes and ran, and it hit my head and went into the field, pretty much like most goals. But it was a little bit. I think we lost the game as well. So, you know, it's always nicer when you score and you win. But, you know, certainly a good moment, and, you know, good to get off the mark anyway.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you ended up with 7 goals with the Knicks over that time. So that's not too shabby. It's more than Stephen Taylor got with his time as captain.
Yeah, well, honestly, it was like there was a lot of guys that just never, like, couldn't get off the mark, and like every game that went by, the pressure actually builds, you know, because you didn't want to have the record for the most games and the least goals. So certainly it was, honestly, whenever anyone scored, it was, especially when they were getting up around this, you know, 60, 70, 80 games, you know, like it was, you start getting a bit paranoid about it.
I can still remember Vince Lear's first goal, and he had an absolute thunderbolt from outside the penalty box, and it was like, you know, the whole stadium erupted. It's like, he finally got one.
Yeah. It was a good goal too, actually. I remember that.
Yeah. So what was it like playing under Ricky Herbert? I mean, because he was he the first coach when you signed up with the Knicks?
So so pretty much had Ricky for the All Whites and for the Phoenix. And certainly our first 4 to 5 years under Ricky was, so we weren't successful because we never won the A-League, but we had a great team and a great culture and a great bunch of boys, and like we just absolutely loved our time you know, in those years. And, you know, Ricky did a great job of probably recruiting the players to have that. But, you know, I sort of, as time went on with me and Ricky, we sort of, with the All Whites and the World Cup, we had our sort of falling outs a little bit, and so we kind of didn't end on great terms. But in terms of those first 4 or 5 years, like, you know, he did a great job of bringing a good culture in, and he certainly gave me my first opportunity as a professional at the Phoenix too, so I can never take that away from him.
Yeah. And then Ricky departed, and in come Ernie Merrick, and by all accounts, that's when, you know, your career kind of took off again.
Yeah, it certainly did, and I talk about it all the time. And, you know, Ernie Merrick for me was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. He was honest. He believed in me. He backed me and supported me. And, you know, as a player and a person, that's kind of all you need. It's like that in anything, work, you know, probably marriages and everything, you know. And all he sort of said to me, well, one thing that he did for me was he got rid of my, you know, I guess I was getting a lot of yellow cards, not so many reds. I had a few reds, but it was more yellow cards. and getting suspensions and stuff. And he just kind of turned to me and said, Siggy, you're letting the whole team down. It's, it's not acceptable. And like, you need to seriously look at yourself on that. And again, I did. And then he actually started teaching me how to play out of the back. He spent time on me and just said, you just got to keep practicing. And he gave me that opportunity, and it was repetitive. And I did a lot for myself too to get me to that point, but I developed a lot more under Ernie. And as you said, and for me, even when I retired, I was probably at the peak of my career, and it was a shame that I was 35 and couldn't carry on, but certainly Ernie was a massive factor for my development and growth, and as a person, he really helped me.
So do you think that so the tension between you and Ricky Herbert, did that almost cause you to go to another A-League club or elsewhere in the world?
Not really. There was a few things for me why I didn't go. When I signed with the Phoenix and when I was growing up in New Zealand, we were always classed as like, soccer pussies, soccer fags, all those things.
Yeah.
And when I signed at the Phoenix, I had something that I loved playing football. I really did, and I had a real passion for it, but I love to hate it as well. So I had this thing that I created, and I wanted to inspire as many young kids as possible in New Zealand, because I wanted them to grow up thinking and knowing that they can play as professionals, they can play for their country, and they can do it from the grassroots of New Zealand. And that's what drove me, that's what kept me going, and that's why I didn't really want to leave the Phoenix, was because that was my motto and that was what I was trying to achieve and set out to do. So there was opportunities to leave, but like for me, it was all about the people and New Zealand, and so if I went to, say, Perth Glory offered me a deal and it was like $30,000 difference, it's like, why would you move for $30,000 difference, like in pay rise or whatever, when you can stay here and you don't have to move your family? You pretty much, every time I was playing for the Phoenix, I felt like I was playing for my country. So like, I just got massive buzz out of that, and that's all I wanted to do in the end.
So there was never a thought that if Ernie Merritt didn't come along when he did, that you would have retired earlier, or was there?
Good question. There was certainly times when I questioned myself around. It wasn't so much about the Phoenix, because I loved the Phoenix. Like, I was just like, I was playing week in, week out. Like, that was fine. I probably struggled more with the All Whites because I played every World Cup qualifier leading right up until the World Cup. I was in amazing form, like absolutely couldn't have asked anything more from myself. I could look at myself in the mirror and say, well, I did everything. And then I got to the World Cup, and leading into the World Cup, I'm like, man, I'm not playing in these warm-up games. And Winston Reid and Tommy Smith had obviously come in and had a New Zealand passport, so probably a little bit of bad luck as well. But like, they were in centre back as well as me, and started to realise that possibly the World Cup dream was going to be over, and I wouldn't play a single minute, which was devastating. And that was definitely at that time was, do you carry on or don't you carry on?
So when you were experiencing that, the tough times, obviously tough with Ricky at the Knicks, and then things at the World Cup, what were some of the strategies, or what was some of the things that you did for yourself to keep yourself on the level, or operating in a healthy kind of way, or weren't you able to do that? What did you do?
Yeah, and probably if I look back now, and I've had a lot of time to reflect, there was probably some stuff where I let it go too long around. So obviously my frustration was that Ricky and the management, or mainly Ricky, hadn't come and spoken to me and said, oh, you're a massive part of this team. You know, unfortunately, this has happened with these players. They've come in, they're playing at a higher level. Probably put an arm around me and just said, mate, I'm so sorry. I can't, we just can't fit you in the team. And it is unlucky. It's, you know, and I probably would have accepted that more. And just as time went on, I felt more and more less included. The team was doing well. I was feeling really low and didn't feel part of it. But I knew that I didn't want to let the team down. And like at that time, Italy was struggling too, and they were having all sorts of trouble in their team environment. And I wanted to make sure that we still had a great culture and a great dynamic of who we are. So yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that that was all running fine. But deep down and underneath, I was really struggling, couldn't sleep, really struggled to sleep, and you know, there was just a number of things that were going on. And looking back, I didn't really know what to do. And it manifested, and I just got so frustrated, and it all boiled up and built up. And in the end, I ended up cracking, and that was when I just got frustrated with it was it was after the World Cup, and it was when when I obviously stomped on the player. I think it was against Saudi Arabia or someone like that. Can't remember who it was, but that was just me. That was just a build up of a whole big line of frustration. And in that game, I played the game that I played the first game on that tour, and then in the second game I got dropped, and I got no one explained to me why I was dropped and what happened. So then that whole thing from the World Cup came back again, where it was like, why am I sitting on the bench again? I've had another good game, and then I'm on the bench, and like I literally I snapped and saw red, and just couldn't do anything about it. Like I knew it was coming, I could feel my rage, but I just didn't have the tools to deal with it, and didn't know quite what to do. Even my wife was on Skype that night, and she was like, just be careful, I can see that you're not in a good place. And even she knew that I just wasn't. And so flipping out of that, I actually started a life coaching course a few weeks after that, and that kind of started giving me some tools on how to deal with, you know, frustration, anger, disappointment, and that was probably one of the good starting points around the whole being able to deal with things differently. And then even now, in my daily life, you know, 10 years, 20, 15 years later, when I feel those same emotions, whether it's work related or whatever it might be, I just try and deal with it a bit differently and be a bit more calmer, and actually go and talk about it, and actually express my frustrations. And I try not to get angry, and you try and just stay in a bit more of a process is probably what I would say. But yeah, it's definitely something that was I'll never get over not playing at the World Cup. It was just something that I just won't, and I've got to park it and learn to know that I can't do anything about it. But certainly it was certainly a tough time.
Do you wish that more players would be open about their mental health issues?
Yeah, certainly would. I think when you're in it, you know, like when you're actually in that moment, that's the hardest time to express how you're feeling, you know, how to talk to people, you know, and what you're actually feeling. Because sometimes when you're going through it, you actually don't know how to deal with it and why you're feeling like that. So it is actually when you're in that time and in that moment, it's actually really, really hard. And I was just saying to you guys earlier that I've just been going through the last 6 months with work and burnout, and it's like I'm trying to express this to my business partners and tell them how I'm feeling, but like it's so hard to, and you don't know how to deal with it because you don't know yourself. And that was probably the hardest thing, was actually expressing that and getting that information across so they understand, or anyone you're talking to understands. So yeah.
Does it help when you can come onto platforms like this and talk to people, and knowing that it will go out to your fans and help other people?
And again, that's another great question. And that's why I'm on here. Funny enough, is I'm now working towards learning new tools, learning new ways, growth mindset around how I can do things differently at work to be a bit more efficient and smarter, and also start getting out a bit more, because I've sort of been quite closed off with doing things. So I thought, this getting on here was probably a great opportunity to just start talking and, talk about what's been going on, talk about what's happened, and it might actually be quite therapeutic, so thank you for getting me on.
That's the kind of stuff that we want on to you. You're absolutely welcome. So when you eventually did retire, you had a swan song at Canterbury, if I'm not mistaken. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So you've done your homework, haven't you?
Well, I don't do much. I'm actually having sight issues, so I get Jonathan to do a lot of the background
Oh, well
stuff
done.
now.
Well done. Yeah. So going back again, it comes back to the whole wanting to inspire as many people as possible, or as many young people as possible. And Canterbury was my hometown. I grew up there. I played for Shamrock, which is no longer because they merged with FC20. But I never wanted to forget where I came from, no matter where, how high I went up. Playing, Phoenix, All Whites, whatever. I always remembered where I was from and who my people were, and the people that were there from the start. Before I was Ben Sigmund, the footballer, there was heaps of people that loved me and admired me for just being Ben Sigmund, the club player or Canterbury player. So I wanted to kind of honour those people. And John Brown was my coach from sort of 17, and John Brown came from Scotland, and he was a massive influence, and he was coaching Kashmir Tech at the time. And I was like, it was more a bit of a selfish thing from my point of view, but it was about going back and finishing my last, season with John Brown, because he kind of started it for me, and I wanted to finish it with him. And that was kind of the whole thing for me. He still is a really good mate of mine, just like there's a lot of others, but John stands out the most for me, from Canterbury. So that was, a big thing for me.
Do you ever regret not giving, say, Europe or UK a decent crack?
I did try. So when I was younger, I was possibly sort of 17, 18, just leaving school, and I went over to Blackburn. I went to Bolton, Blackpool, and I got over there, and I was like, I didn't have a British passport. I didn't even have a passport in terms of playing in Europe. There was just so many challenges to try and play there. I turned up, and I pretty much stood on the field and just watched it, like everyone playing around me, and I just wasn't there. There was a couple of reasons that around behind that. Like, my mates were back in New Zealand, just starting university, having a great time, loving life, starting to leave home, and I wanted to be part of that. But also, I still didn't know whether I wanted to be a professional footballer and whether it was for me, and that I really, really wanted it. Like, a lot of people grow up going, I just want to be a footballer and that's all I want to be. Like, I never had that. Like, it just wasn't really in me I was good at it and I was doing well at it, but I just didn't know whether it was really me. And even to this day, like, everyone talks to me about Man United and all these players, and everyone in the chat, and I'm like, mate, I don't know who that is. I got no idea. Like, I'm not a football nerd. I'm just like, I played it, and that's about it. So I did have a kind of go, and I was in Germany as well for a year, and I always remember there's a song, and it comes on all the time. It's Country Road, Take Me Home to the Place I Belong. And New Zealand was always that place, and it always will be and always is. And I love this place, and I'm proud of it. So I just wanted to get home, to be honest.
So do you keep an eye on the current team?
I always keep my eyes on it. I keep an eye on what's happening, like in any sport. I enjoy all of it, and it's great to see any team, out there playing professionally. And, like, it's great to see them do well. And, like, I'm always excited of the new year, and I always look forward to sitting on my couch watching rather than having to play.
One of the things that the Knicks are doing really well at the moment is developing the academy. So you've got 17, 18, 19-year-olds both on the men's and the women's team coming through. What kind of, is there like a piece of advice or an insight that you had from your time where, like, if you could say something to those players, think about doing this or take that approach? Have you got something that, you'd put out there?
Yeah, something that I always, whenever I get a young person challenging me or asking me about some advice, I always flip it on its head and go, start thinking about who you are and what you want to be. Like, because I felt like when I started playing at my best, I knew who I was and what I wanted and what I wanted to be. And so I kind of challenge them in that space because, once they know where they want to be and what they want to become, they can start, climbing the ladder to get to where they want to get to. And I also say, like, it's okay if you don't make it professionally, but just get to the point where you're playing the best at your ability. It doesn't mean that you have to go and play for Man United. Like, for me, I was so happy that I was just playing for the Phoenix and the All Whites. Like, that's as far as I wanted to kind of take it. I loved it, so my advice would be just take it as far as you possibly can. And then the other thing in terms of a football side of it, like, I always tell this story, and so does Paul Eiffel, but Ernie Merritt came in, obviously, and I had to start to learn, playing out from the back pretty much. And I used to grab the assistant coach, and I'd be like, he'd smack 15 balls as fast as he could, and I had to get under control with a good touch and then pass it through this little small goal as fast as possible. And that's kind of how I started developing as a, playing out from the back. And Paul Eiffel and all the boys used to sit on the sideline and laugh and go, oh, mate, he's not going to get any better. What's he doing? Like, what, and then to this day, Paul Eiffel always says, mate, I got to give it to you. You developed yourself way more than I ever thought you could at 33, 34, 35, and was playing the best you ever did. And so my advice is that, if you want to go and do something, that don't kind of cheat, make sure you do it at 100%. And actually, if you want to do something, you can, but it's just going to take a lot of work, and you just can't think that it's just going to happen.
Just crossing back to the mental health a little bit, we had Jim Lewis on the show maybe a month or two ago, and he was saying how that even the women have got great mental health availability with what happened with Grace Nowicki last season. So how good is it to see that even the females are getting the help that they deserve?
Yeah, and it's something that I'm really passionate about as well. With male and female, we now sell football gear around the country, and I push very, very hard to have female tracksuits and pants and tops. I think it's super important. It's only going to grow more and more, the female game in this space. So it's exciting for them, and in terms of the kind of whole mental health side of it, I just think how important it is to kind of make sure that we've got the providers and the support that, if someone is struggling, that they know where to go and where to turn to. And, I do a little bit of work also with Wellington Rugby, and in that space, we've got a whole platform where if a player is struggling and, needs that help, we actually have Instep, which is a counselling provider, which is just amazing that we can actually ring them up and get them in and booked in and try and get the help they need, which is just outstanding. And the more and more we can do that in sport, the better off we're going to be, because there's a hell of a lot of pressure on these players now with social media, with the papers, and just expectation So it's only going to get worse, and if we can support them, then that's only going to be good for everyone, really, and they're going to perform better too.
And how proud are you seeing that your former club has added a women's a division to their club?
Oh, it's been a long time coming, and they've been working so hard, and to get it to where it's at now is outstanding. And you know, for me now, it's about how far can they take it. And you know, you look at some of the girls now, and you know, they're athletes, and like they're up there with the best. And I'm looking forward to the under-20 World Cup for the girls, which is coming up too, and that's all exciting stuff. And then a mate of mine, Craig Wingham, is his daughter's in the under-20s, so he's been messaging me. I had to do a video for them, and I'm telling you now, like I had to do a 20-second video to wish them luck, and it took me like 20 times to get it right. I was like bobbing up and down. I was like sort of shaking my shoulders. I didn't actually realize how hard it is to actually do a 20-second video for someone. I was so nervous.
I have it on record that Craig thinks that he's the best coach that Alyssa's ever had. But he'll watch this, and I love giving him a hard time about it.
Oh, mate, I tell you, it's like I was like giving him shit. Hey, I was going to actually make that video and just be all about him rather than about the under-20 girls and wishing them luck.
Yeah. Say anything you want to him on here, because he's a good friend of ours that we watch in this.
No, he's a good man, and he was another guy back in Canterbury that was a massive part of my life and influenced me even in my working career. Like I had one of my first jobs with him, and I worked under him in the warehouse, you know, and those great people that, you know, I didn't ever want to forget what they'd done for me. You know, they don't realise it, but there's so many people that help you on the way.
So so those people who have helped you along the way, who's around you now? Who are your people, your go-to people, the ones who give you strength and courage and so on? Who do you rely on?
Yeah, it's a funny one, because it's something that's really probably something that's worth, you know, that people would probably talk about is like when I left the Phoenix, I think my contract ended in May, and then like your money, you get your last pay, and then you kind of step into another world, you know, like you've got to start working. You know, I was setting up a few things here and there, but literally I walked out of that last pay, and I actually had no money coming in, you know, so you have to then go and create this whole new world and this whole new life and get back on track. And something that I regret probably is that I didn't go and have a really good break after my football career and just reassess and just take some time out. And I just went straight into the workforce. And then I actually when I wrote my book, I went up to a printing firm, printing.com, and a guy called Dave Bell was the CEO, and he was helping me just work through some book stuff. But like as we were talking, like his values were the same as mine, and the way he did business was the same as mine, and really looking after the customer. And I was like, man, this guy like really sounds like me as a person. And I actually went home, and I was like, man, I said to my wife, I think this guy Dave, who I met, needs to be my business mentor. And do you reckon I ring him, because he had all the same values as me and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, she said, yeah. So I rang him up, and I was like, mate, I just love what you do and how you operate. And I asked him to be my business mentor, and we've become friends and mates. But he is probably one that certainly is, from going from a football thing to work and and just a different lifestyle. He's certainly helped me in that aspect massively. And then I've stayed in Wellington, and I do miss my Canterbury friends, like the guys that you can just go down and you don't even have to ring them. You just turn up and you can have a beer or a coffee, and it's like, hey mate, how are you? I don't have a massive amount of that in Wellington, which I do miss. Well, I got friends here and that, but just, you know, when you've known someone for 20 years, it's just a lot easier to just turn up on their doorstep. So I do certainly miss that. But Dave Bell has been a massive influence around the work side of it now.
So our final section is about your fully committed in your book. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's quite a funny, well, it's kind of a funny story. So I kind of, again, this kind of went back to the whole rugby thing. As a footballer, no one wanted to write my book. No one really cared about Ben Sigmund, the footballer, in terms of, I'm talking about, you know, book writers and people that, you know, pay you to do it pretty much. And so again, like, I got my back up a little bit and I was like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this all myself. And so I went about it and created how we were going to do it. And I got Jason Pine to write it with me. I was really determined to have him write it, but it was my words, you know, like I read over it about 25, 30 times to make sure it sounded like me and was me, rather than, you know, sometimes you can get caught up in some of the words might not be quite what it was. But for me, that whole book was really about me in terms of who I was and what language I'd use. And then just kind of went about it by that. And then just like I got a sponsor of, you know, it was going to cost a lot of money. I got a sponsor of 30,000 from my old boss, George Morris at Corporate Consumables. You know, so we started creating a bit of a financial platform, which helped us buy the books. I then went and met like a few like Go Media. So Go Media helped us with a lot of advertisement and stuff on the billboards and bus backs. And then I started reaching out to TVs, you know, and getting advertisement for the sponsors, and then just gradually grew that to then putting in a book tour right through the country, and then launching it, and then even had to organise to distribute the books. Like, there was just the whole lot I had to do. And we started in Dunedin, and we're like, yeah, man, we'll get on the piss and have a few nights out as we go up the country. And I got to about my third night and I'm like, man, we've got to stop this. And then I got to Christchurch. I was pretty much burnt out, and I still had to get to Auckland with about 5 more trips. And I kind of got to Auckland and I was like, man, I'm never doing this again. Like, literally absolutely shattered. But probably looking back, it was a pretty big achievement to be able to manage and set that all up and do it all myself with the help of a lot of people, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I was driving from Napier to Hamilton. Like, on the drive, I'm organising the next venue, where we're going, make sure the people are there, everything's sorted, you know. So like, it was a massive commitment. And probably looking back now, reflecting, it was a massive achievement. And it was something, again, it was probably more my determination around, you know, saying you can't do it or you can do it. So that was kind of another thing around inspiring people, I guess.
And would you like to coach one day? Would you like to coach an A-League team, or, you know, even a local team, and help the other kids a bit more, kids coming through?
Yeah, so I want to. My goal was to make sure I'm around my kids as much as possible, so they get my time when they're younger. And, you know, if I was coaching or whatever, managing or whatever, I'd never be home again in the weekends. And had done 20 years of being away all weekend. So, you know, just watching the kids grow up now. But I would love to be a kit man, and then obviously be the kind of support guy. But I never want to coach like full on head coach or whatever. But I think I can help give advice, you know, improve the players in certain areas, and then just kind of hang their kit up and just be behind the scenes a little bit. But certainly no great interest in coaching at any high quality or getting my badges. But certainly love being around the environment, and just starting to miss, you know, it's been 6 years. I'm just starting to miss a little bit of football. Like, I'm kind of looking now. So I don't know what it's going to be or what it looks like, but certainly will be involved in some aspects a bit later on.
Are there any final comments as we close that you would like to say to your fans who have supported you?
Oh, look, for me, it was just every game, especially playing in the Cake Tin, was massive. I loved it. I loved the fans. I loved the people. I did it. I did it for them. They inspired me to be out there, giving it everything because I felt like I was playing for my country every time, and it was just a massive honour. And thank you. I was just still value it, and I'll value it for the rest of my life. It was honestly the best thing ever.
Any final comments from you, Jonathan?
Oh, I was just going to say we probably need to give Ben an opportunity to acknowledge his wife, because if she watches this and he hasn't given her a special shout out, he might get a talking to later. So we'll open that door for you.
Yeah, well, look, at the end of the day, I think Deanna, my wife, if I didn't have her, she, I would have struggled, because she was the one, especially when I struggled at the World Cup. Like, she was my biggest fan, and she was hurt probably more than I was. And it's hard to go back there because I get emotional, but she certainly made me accountable. She pretty much kicked me up the backside and said, get out there and prove everyone who you are and how good you are. And the following year, after the World Cup disappointment, I went on and got Player of the Year, Players Player, I think Media Player, and one other. So I got all 4 awards. And to be fair, she needs the credit for that, because she was the one that said, come on, you're not going to give up now. So she's hard on me. She's very hard on me, but she's been there, and she's always got my back.
Well, we'd like to say thank you for coming on the show today, Ben, and to the fans, we say goodbye. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you, guys.